Hello, my name is Shelley. Some time ago, I ran across a book by Jeffrey H. Jackson titled Paper Bullets: Two Women Who Risked Their Lives to Defy the Nazis. This book centers around the story of two women, Lucy and Suzanne, who were artists, collaborators, and life partners, who ended up creating and maintaining a private propaganda and disinformation campaign against the Nazi occupation of the island of Jersey for 4 years. They were captured, tried, sentenced to death, and then released when World War II ended. Their art didn't become famous until after their deaths, and they've since become inspirations to the LGBTQ community. I was fortunate to explore the book and then to meet the author and learn a little bit more about these fascinating and role-shattering women. Have you ever taken a selfie? With the ease of camera phones, we can create, stage, and edit photographs in a few seconds, smoothing out unwanted distractions, brightening colors, changing the focus of the picture, and guiding the viewer's eye. Photography has long been an avenue to explore questions of identity and perception. In the early 1900s, though, the camera was beginning to become more user-friendly and accessible to communities. Like today, people explored a variety of techniques to create art and play with the viewer's perception. Lucy and Suzanne epitomize this search in the pursuit of self-discovery. Lucy was born in France in 1894, the daughter of a wealthy Jewish newspaperman. She was raised by her grandmother and attended school in England for 2 years before returning to Nantes. There, she met Suzanne, who would become her friend, artistic partner, stepsister, and lifelong companion. Suzanne, meanwhile, had studied at the Nantes Fine Art Academy and was an illustrator, graphic designer, and seamstress. She was also a writer and photographer during her life. She and Lucy met in 1909 and became very close. When Suzanne's widowed mother married Lucy's divorced father in 1917, it made the artists stepsisters, providing them with a cover that would shield them from social stigma and scandal for many years. The two created gender-neutral aliases, Claude and Marcel, and spent approximately 1920 to 1937 following their artistic and creative passions. The two explored questions of identity and social expectations through cosplay, photography, fashion, collages, and illustrations. They were very involved with both the avant-garde and surrealist movements in Paris. And in addition to their artistic achievements, they were politically active as well. And both women were published in several magazines of the day. Throughout the 30s, anti-Semitism was on the rise, and in addition, Lucy dealt with chronic health issues. The life partners and stepsisters decided to retire in 1937 to the island of Jersey, only 12 miles away from France and considered a part of England's territory. However, since the island tended to be conservative, they decided to keep their past secret, introducing themselves to their neighbors as sisters. 3 years later, when the German army occupied the island of Jersey, the women decided to use their skills in art and writing to wage a campaign to demoralize and confuse the occupying force. They slipped small messages and drawings into locations where the soldiers would find them. From photographs on walls to messages slipped into bottles, the German-language magazines sold at newsstands, and even soldiers' vehicles and coat pockets. Lucy and Suzanne worked to sow a sense of unease among the occupying army. And since Suzanne was fluent in German, she translated each of the notes carefully, hoping to create the impression that discontented German soldiers were the actual source. Paper Bullets is a fascinating story of two incredible individuals. And I had a chance a while back to actually talk about the book with the author, Jeffrey Jackson, who was kind enough to share some excerpts of the book with us.
On the morning of July 25th, 1944, Lucy Schwab and Suzanne Malherbe went into Saint-Hélier to do some shopping. Their trip was part of their regular routine. Outside the offices of the Jersey Evening Post, they glanced up at the large clock at the top of the building. Suzanne leaned in and whispered to Lucy to keep watch. Then Suzanne scanned the long row of police cars the Nazi occupation forces always parked along Charles Street, a reminder of how heavily the Germans censored the island's only newspaper. Suzanne took a small piece of paper out of her pocket and began moving carefully toward one of the police cars as Lucy stood by on lookout duty. Suzanne stuck the gummed paper on the windshield. It read, "The cowardly bureaucrats of the police who live on lies and shameful cruelty will be destroyed by the soldiers with no names." No one seemed to be paying any attention to the middle-aged women in Burberry trench coats with bright scarves tied around their heads. Suzanne quickly attached papers to a few more windshields and casually strolled away, her Wellington boots thumping on the pavement. If anyone asked the women what they were doing, their shopping bag would provide a ready alibi.
German leadership on the island took notice of these small notes and drawings and were determined to put a stop to it. They believed that these little missives were part of a larger campaign to demoralize and drive out the occupying force.
During a quiet dinner, a fist pounded at the door. It was the moment Lucy and Suzanne had been expecting every day for nearly 4 years. The only question was whether the Germans were clever enough to have discovered the women on their own, or if someone had ratted them out. Suzanne got up from the table, walked to the door, and pulled it open. Having studied these men carefully from afar for a long time, Lucy and Suzanne knew that they would not be smiling. 5 men stood on their doorstep, including Chief of the Secret Field Police, Captain Boda, and a fair-haired man with bright blue eyes, who wore mustard-colored +4s. Suzanne greeted them with a simple "good evening." With a surprising graciousness, the fair-haired man clicked his heels and made a deep, respectful bow from the hips. "German secret police," Suzanne remembered him announcing politely, "we come to search your house." Boda strode to the window seat and made himself comfortable, perhaps puffing on his cigar, while the fair-haired man, whom the others called Carl, started to run excitedly back and forth through the house. They ransacked every corner, pulling out all the drawers, prying into every nook and cranny of Lucy and Suzanne's lives. From his perch, Boda watched with suspicion as the 2 tired women, their faces slightly wrinkled and hair graying, stood by. "Too late," Lucy announced in English, knowing these men did not speak French and herself unable to speak much German. "Germany has already lost the war," she proclaimed. Lucy and Suzanne remained calm, but their maid Edna panicked as the men ravaged the house. She knew everyone in the household had been breaking German regulations by hoarding food. Perhaps she worried that she had let something slip about their illegal radio. Carl came over to Lucy and stared down at her. "And what do you think will happen to you? You tell me that," he shouted, his calm and polite demeanor at the door now gone as the adrenaline from the thrill of the chase pumped through him. "I think you will probably torture us and shoot us afterward," Lucy replied flatly, as though she had always known and accepted that this would be the outcome. Carl was stunned, silent. These women were not hysterical or even surprised by a raid on their house, but were already anticipating their own deaths. "I believe until that moment, he had thought us unaware of the risks we had been taking," Suzanne reflected. Carl looked at Boda, then back at Lucy and Suzanne. "But we never do that kind of thing," he proclaimed indignantly. "That is BBC propaganda." Lucy glanced back at him, raising her eyebrow in disbelief.
Paper Bullets is available both through Libby and through Hoopla. I highly recommend checking it out and taking a look at this forgotten chapter of World War II history. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you check out Paper Bullets by Jeffrey Jackson. And if you're participating in the summer reading program, you can use the special code RESIST to earn extra points. Happy reading, everybody.